My name is Michael Larkin. I'm a biologist in Florida. So I first want to start off. When you start a research project, you have certain assumptions, and you think the animals will do X, and then you study them, and you find out they do not even Y. They do like some foreign thing you didn't expect. So it's just interesting because you think you know what the animals do, so you start a study project, and then you study them, and they don't do that at all. They do something completely different. So this was an interesting project because this was for bonefish in Florida. So to give you a quick background, um, they're really known as like a shallow water fish. In fact, they're known for tailing, meaning they're in water that's so skinny that their tail is sticking out of the water, the tip of their tail. Or when they're feeding, when they put their nose in the ground, they feed off benthic animals like crabs and shrimp. Their actually tail will stick out of the water. And there's a big fishery for them in Florida, in the Bahamas, and in other Caribbean areas, and subtropical and tropical waters around the globe, where it's real clear water, so you sight fish, you see them. But anyway, so it's a shallow water near shore fish. I mean, they're practically sometimes you can see them. Their gills are practically covered in water. I mean, so but then when we started studying them, they found out that they move over very very long distances over very very deep water. So in Florida, we did tagging. Think of like a spaghetti tag you put in their back. A specific has a phone number on it. Each fish has a specific code on a certain number, so you know this was fish one, this was fish two. So we tagged over 8,000 of those in Florida, and a couple of them swam over to the Bahamas. And then in our project years later with acoustic telemetry, so think of this as like a pinging tag, a tag you put in the abdomen of the fish and it pings. And then you actually have receivers which detect it. So you need to have receivers in the water in order to detect it. But anyway, so we were doing that in Florida. And in the Bahamas, there was a small tooth sawfish project going on, and they were detecting bonefish they were tagging in Florida were swimming over to the Bahamas in Andros Island and being recaptured over there. So it's just, and then so it brings up a lot of questions. Um, for one, like why? Like, well, I guess before I get into why, like how? How do they navigate? So if you're looking at the Florida Keys and you're going to Bahamas, these movements are over hundreds of miles and over very, very deep water, over in some areas up to 1,000 feet. And first you think of like, well, how do they navigate? Like, and I don't know the answer to these questions because you get these results and I could speculate, like how do they navigate? But I'd love to know myself. Are they using the sun? Are they using the pressure gradients? Are they using salinity? How are they navigating? Are they some tuna have some magnetic sense, for they know which way's north. So how are they? I haven't seen any evidence of that in bonefish, but in some way they know to leave Florida and swim, hundreds of miles, over 100 miles, over to the Bahamas. So how they navigate that, I don't know, but it's interesting. And then why? Why are they going over the Bahamas? Another thing, they were captured in Andros Island, Bahamas. So where these fish were tagged, the island of Bimini, the Bahamas, is like half the distance. So they could have easily gone to Bimini. When maybe they did. I mean, maybe they did. They just weren't caught. They weren't detected. You always have these unknowns in these projects. So, but we found all three of these fish that were captured in the Bahamas that came from Florida were over in Andros, and they were all within 30, detected all or caught within 30 miles of each other. So it's interesting. You go to Florida, they were caught within over 100. They were tagged. I'm sorry, within over 100 miles from each other. But then you go to the Bahamas and Andros Island, so it's one specific area. They were all these detections and recaptures were within 30 miles of each other. And then, first of all, when I think of this, like, one of the in basic statistics, so, there's always outliers. You ignore the outliers. Well, were these outliers? Well, I looked into it further. They were not. Meaning these bonefish, in terms of the distance, they swim over 100 miles in Florida. Just going from Miami down to Key West and distances like that. So they can certainly travel distances of over 100 miles. So therefore, they can certainly make the distance from Florida to the Bahamas. So it's not an outlier. They've made this distance with other tag data that we have in Florida. So yeah, the big question, and a lot of these questions is why? Why do they make that movement? Is it for prey availability? They're doing it for food. Is it predator avoidance? They're avoiding mortality. Is there better habitat quality? Is there a spawning event? And there are some documented spawnings in Andros, but there's also documented spawning in Florida of bonefish. So it's not like that's the only place they spawn. So there's a lot of, so we don't know why. There's also some interesting geology of Andros with some carbonate where there's a lot of mudding over there. And bonefish have been known to feed in muds or create muds to probably, when they're rooting at the bottom, maybe it also helps them avoid predators and the mess they make when they're trying to dig up crabs and shrimp off the bottom. But there's also some big muds that happen with carbonate over in Andros. And then, like, why is this important? Because we think of these as managing these two different stocks. We have a Florida stock and a Bahamas stock. But maybe we should, really look at that. Are there more fish going over than we thought? And, well, first of all, we didn't know they were doing this till we discovered this. But, maybe, so management needs to consider that, these fish moving back and forth. And also we've had fish go from Florida to Bahamas. Maybe Bahamas fish come to Florida. But to do that, you have to have a lot of effort and research over in the Bahamas, tagging. There has been some small scale tagging over there. So I'm not ruling it out that they can't make it. It's not a one-way movement. I believe it's a two-way movement. Do they go over, then go to the Bahamas and come back? Or do they go over there and stay there? Or do Bahamas fish also move from over to Florida? I like to think so. We don't have the data to support that now, but it certainly is a possibility. We need more tagging effort and research going to Bahamas and then see if those fish, in fact, come over to Florida. But anyway, so I kind of really summarized it here, but if you want to know more details, there's a reference to the paper. So I recommend if you read that, and I hope you found this interesting. Thank you.